Hello and welcome to the Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. And on today's show, be afraid, be very afraid, because we are talking about The Fly, the 1986 sci-fi horror that stars Jeff Goldblum as an eccentric scientist who, after one of his experiments goes wrong, slowly turns into a fly hybrid creature. Co-starring Geena Davis and directed by David Cronenberg, The Fly was an unexpected box office hit that ushered Goldblum and Davis into movie stardom and propelled Cronenberg into the mainstream. And joining me today to talk all things The Fly is Tyler Nichols. He's a writer, narrator, and editor over at Joe Blow. You can also check out his stuff at tylernicholscreates.com. You can also check out his podcast, Needlessly Nostalgic. I'll have the link for that and link for all things Tyler Nichols as well. His link tree I'll have in the show notes. I recommend everyone check out his video essays he does for Joe Blow, the Needlessly Nostalgic podcast, all of this stuff. Check it out. And Tyler, thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always so much fun to talk movies with you.
And today we're talking about one of the great icky movies of all time, I think, when it comes to like all things sci-fi horror and body horror. The Fly. I was trying to rack my brain about the first time I kind of watched this movie. I, it's one of those films that when I was younger, and I've mentioned this so many times. My older brother was like this. He's like 7, 8 years older than me. He had the video card. He can go get the all the VHSs and he gets the action and sometimes the horror stuff. The Fly was one of those films that he brought home. I couldn't watch it, of course. He didn't allow me to. But just the whole concept of a guy going in a teleportation machine and turning into something else, that was something that was just kind of stuck with me. And the film was so popular, it just became part of the mainstream. And I'd be afraid, be very afraid. The tagline is just what became, was everywhere. And so I kind of knew of The Fly. It wouldn't be until years later. And when I finally watched it, I must have been around 16, 17, around that time. And it just kind of blew me away that number one, how great the filmmaking was, and number two, how a film so and when I say this, I don't mean it as a negative, so monstrous in the way that it kind of shows the depiction of this guy, this transformation this guy goes through, and the different kind of things that Cronenberg goes through with talking about the flesh and everything. It's kind of concepts that were so very alien to me at that time. Body horror is something that still to this day really does make me queasy, and it's supposed to, right? But it is a kind of like one of the horror genres that I kind of I pause before kind of getting into with any new kind of body horror movie. But this was definitely one of the first kind of introductions to the genre for me. And it's still to this day, I think it's 40 years this week that the movie came out. It still stands as one of the great body horror movies because of the craft in the film and everything else. I think it's just a terrific movie. And but what about yourself, Tyler? Do you remember the first time The Fly kind of came into your radar, the first time you watched it?
Well, I was a big Simpsons guy growing up, so the Simpsons has like a Treehouse of Horror segment that has The Fly. So that was what like the first inkling of even understanding the story, getting to hear what that whole deal was with the teleporters. So I knew of things with like elements of The Fly before actually having seen it, because like you said, the Be Afraid, Be Very Afraid had permeated pop culture at that point. And I think I was finally able to get it a DVD, like a special edition DVD released of the film, and I got it like day it came out, and that was my first. Cause I used to do blind buys as a teenager, and I did a Fly blind buy and was blown away by it. It's to this day, it's my favorite David Cronenberg film. And I mean, and he has some great movies in his filmography, but The Fly has always stood out. It's I think it's one of Jeff Goldblum's greatest roles. I think it's one of Geena Davis's greatest roles. There's so much with that film that it's was crazy when you had got like contacted me about doing this, because I'm like, wait, 40 years? That's insane. Because even watching it for this, I'm like, I can't see the 40 years at all. That you could do this almost exact script today, and it would like still work, because it's grounded enough with its science fiction that it doesn't feel too dated or too like of the future, and it's just insanely impressive.
I think what helps in regards to the how it ages so well is that even though it's a movie set in the 80s, the majority of the film is set within this one location of this studio loft apartment. So you're not really exposed to different 80s elements where other films at that time might have, fashion or soundtrack choices, what have you, that can kind of date it. And I think it really does help in its favor, having that kind of decision to, it's almost kind of like the way it's kind of shot and structured. It's almost kind of like a stage play of some sort, that it's like just two people, one apartment the majority of the time. I mean, the cast itself, if you're going to look at the whole cast, it's maybe like 6 or 7 people, and it's mostly Davis and Geena Davis and Jeff Goldblum who are doing most of the heavy lifting here. One thing I didn't know about this movie when I first watched it back in the day was that it was actually a remake of a film from 1958. It was just called The Fly. It was directed by Kurt Newman. It was like a hit in its time as well. It was one of the movies that really launched Vincent Price's career at the time as a horror icon. I haven't seen it. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen the infamous shot. I don't know if you've seen it yourself, Tyler, where
Yes.
this the shot where the guy's stuck in the spider web and he's like, help me," and all that. And it's kind of
Hmm.
horrific, actually, especially for its time. I thought it was very effective. Um,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting just thinking about the movies of the 80s and late 70s, how many of these films were kind of remakes of films from the 50s and 60s. Invasion of the Body Snatchers that Philip Kaufman did, The Thing that John Carpenter did, and The Fly that David Cronenberg film did. A lot of people probably don't know that these are remakes of these films from the 50s and 60s that deal with Cold War and stuff like that. I thought it's a very interesting kind of tidbit. I think people need to realize when they're talking about this film that there was a film that came beforehand.
Yeah, I mean the there. I mean, especially with the Fly, there was three Fly films prior to this the Cronenberg one, and because I got the Shout Factory released some set that has the old school three Fly films plus the Cronenberg and then the Eric Stoltz sequel.
The sequel,
So
yeah.
yeah, and I would say every one of the films has different merits. You kind of have to appreciate that 50s B movie, like monster movie kind of feel to like the first three. But there's a lot of good there, and when you talk about the other films, original Invasion of the Body Snatchers is absolutely phenomenal. But Thing from Another World, it's very dated, so it's I feel like The Fly almost serves as like kind of the middle ground between those two like examples, because it's like it's still in terms of like the original film, it's definitely not as good or as bad as yeah, the thing from Another World or Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
When it comes to this film, doing my research, it's I kind of got some conflicting kind of origin stories about it in regards to who pitched what to who. So there was a Rolling Stone article that came out in 1986. So in that article, it said that the film's screenwriter, Charles Edward Pogue, pitched the idea for a remake to a producer at the time named Kip Oman. But then I read another thing saying Kip Oman kind of pitched it to Charles Edward Pogue. So that's kind of like a little bit of the differentiator there. But what is true is that both of them went to a producer at 20th Century Fox called Stuart Cornfield. So their idea was kind of like this like kind of thinking of the fly. And but the problem was that when Stuart Cornfield kind of like took Pogue's screenplay to 20th Century Fox, they didn't want anything to do with it at first. Number one, they thought it might be a little bit too much like for the audience to kind of take on the whole kind of like the concept of the transformation and all that. But they also thought that the idea of the protagonist becoming an antagonist was too much for audiences at the time. Which
Yeah.
I kind of these days, of course, it's such a normal thing for it to happen. But I guess if you put yourself in a studio seat back in with a big major studio back then, you could kind
Yeah.
of see where that makes some sense.
when Pogue is the one, he was the one that came up with the idea of it being more of a metamorphosis that occurs throughout the film versus just him immediately becoming a monster,
Hmm.
which is like, I know that's a big reason why during like arbitration, because Cronenberg ended up, I know he ended up like rewriting it, but he like fought for Pogue to get credit because it's like, no, Pogue is the one that he came up with the whole foundation of the script and has this like the metamorphosis angle is what the entire film is based off of. It's why it's so like has such pop cultural significance. It's without that angle, if it was just he becomes the fly right away, it wouldn't have that same impact. So it's like good on Pogue.
Very much, and it also it's a great actor showcase as well. I think people tend to forget when it comes to these creature features, even all the way back to the times of like Lon Chaney and stuff like that. You have these great kind of acting showcases where you see the transformations or the metamorphosis of these guys who they go through different personality shifts and stuff like that, which Goldblum's character definitely does through this movie. He starts off kind of like this really kind of nerdy kind of character. He likes, likes eating cheeseburgers, as he likes to say, cheeseburgers and such, and he wears the same clothes every day. And then you see the transformation, the physical transformation, number one, but also the descent into this kind of madness as well. He's
Yeah.
like he's losing body parts as well as his mind. It's just a fantastic showcase, I think, in this movie. So it's 20th Century Fox say no thanks because of the reasons we just said. So Cornfield's like, okay, we're going to sell the script to someone else. And interestingly, the person that comes through is Mel Brooks, director Mel Brooks. He has Brooks Films at the moment. Um, so of course, when you talk Mel Brooks, people think comedies and such, Spaceballs and High Anxiety and all that stuff. People tend to forget that he produced films like The Elephant Man as well, which kind of had dealt with his own kind of body horror kind of stuff going on there, and that had a certain director named David Lynch attached to it. So that he has a good eye for scripts and good eye for directors. Supposedly he bought the film for I think it was like $1 million or something like that, and he wanted Cronenberg to do the film. But Cronenberg was attached to another movie at the time. So do you know which movie Cronenberg was attached to at this time?
Yeah, Total Recall.
Total Recall, exactly. So he's in the middle of adapting that. It's kind of funny how I've been doing these for a while, and I know yourself and Lance that we've needlessly nostalgic. You would have come across this as well. That when you do research on these movies, how many sliding door moments there are in regards to people initially attached to projects, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of thought to myself, what if Cronenberg didn't do The Fly and he did Total Recall? What happens to Paul Verhoeven's career? And what happens to Sharon Stone's career? And then et cetera, et cetera. It's a very kind of interesting kind of concept to think about the different avenues that people can go. And sometimes it takes circumstances, sometimes it takes luck. Sometimes it just takes, not enough money or not enough control. It's a very kind of interesting way to kind of look at the different kind of avenues a lot of these films could have gone through if the initial people attached to the project took it on in the first place.
Yeah, I remember because I did a video on Total Recall ages ago, and I do remember Arnold really throwing his weight around to get the
Mm.
film made, and so I feel like if Cronenberg still was attached, I feel like Arnold would have given him the boot once he came aboard, because Arnold was he was very powerful at that time, and he very much knew what he wanted, and he worked with a lot of the same people because of it.
So with Cronenberg unavailable because he's working on his adaptation of Total Recall, there's a director named Robert Bierman, Bierman, who was locked in fairly early on as a film's director. Unfortunately, he had to move on because his daughter died in a tragic accident while the family was on vacation. So Brooks let him out of his contract. And at this time, Stuart Cornfield was having a conversation with fellow producer Scott Rudin, and Rudin said, "Hey, Cronenberg's Total Recall fell apart, and so this was a moment now they can snatch him and bring him on to the role." You're talking before about all the different changes that kind of Cronenberg made to this movie. There's quite a number of them here. The metamorphosis, of course, the whole Seth Brundle kind of thing, of course, that's the Pogue idea. But what Cronenberg wanted to do, he wanted to kind of take away some of the campy aspects that were in the screenplay. Supposedly, there was also a cameo actor Vincent Price was going to be in it as well. He wanted to kind of move along from all of that kind of stuff. And he also wanted to make sure that the transformation was much more gradual as well. It's something he kind of talked about. He also had the version of the scientist in the original script in Power Script was like a happily married man, but he wanted this time to make it like this kind of like isolated loner, who Goldberg's character wanted to be. The villain was supposed to be like a head of a corporation funding the scientist's experiments, which kind of the second one kind of like had a lot of that kind of head of corporation kind of stuff.
Hmm.
He changed that as well. And he also wanted to make sure that there was no villain per chance. So, like at the start of the film, it's really interesting. John Getz's character, the editor of this scientific paper, he kind of starts off as the villain, and then he becomes a very sympathetic character. And but on the other end, Goldblum's character transitions the other way. So it's almost like to do kind of like a swap here in the film. I think it's changes that were incredibly essential. I think that he brought to the movie because if they just went with whatever Poe was writing in the first place, I don't think that Cronenberg would have been able to pull off the stuff that he had in this movie.
Yeah, and I know that Cronenberg only agreed to even do it was by them giving him a rewrite, like being able to do a rewrite. So I don't even know if we would have ever even gotten Pogue's version with Cronenberg. If it seems like the Cronenberg's involvement is the whole reason that that doesn't happen. Which is, I mean, this is a Cronenberg film in every way, despite it being a remake. It's I think he even said there's one line of dialogue from Pogue's script that transferred over, and there's not much. It's from my understanding, Cronenberg easily could have gotten Pogue off as because Cronenberg did that much of changes to his original script that then he could have been taken off entirely. So like to me that says like this is pretty much entirely just a Cronenberg film, which is it's cool to see, and I wish because we've seen Cronenberg kind of play with some body horror type stuff like he did what Crimes of the Future in recent years, but he never has really gone back to this degree, and I've always wanted him to because this, like I said earlier, this is my favorite Cronenberg.
Favorite Cronenberg. I did a deep dive in Cronenberg maybe 10 years ago. I think when I'm trying to remember the movie that came out, the one with I was going to say the one with Viggo Mortensen. Which one? The one with Viggo Mortensen and Michael Fassbender where they played Carl Jung and what's the other guy's the other psychiatrist's name? Dangerous Method.
Yeah.
That was the name of the movie.
Yes.
A Dangerous Method. And I found myself really in I found myself with Cronenberg. There's like two camps of Cronenberg movie. There's light Cronenberg, so that's like The Dead Zone, The Fly, History of
I love
Violence.
I love that you have the dead zone as light.
That is, but when you
It
compare
is.
to
I'd
say,
agree with you.
but when you go like heavy Cronenberg, Videodrome, Naked Lunch. I tried to watch Naked Lunch and I just couldn't. I couldn't get the wavelength. I couldn't connect to it whatsoever. And
Yeah.
then like there's other kind of films like that, like Existence. I would say is more kind of heavy Cronenberg as well. There's some concepts that he really deals with that are really heavy, and sometimes the storytelling can be really dense. But
Hmm.
sometimes the stuff where he's adapting other people's works, like this was a remake. Dead Zone was Stephen King. History of Violence was based on a comic. When he kind of adapts other people's works and then he puts his own kind of style on it, there's a certain kind of access to it that you can kind of tap into. Do you kind of see what I'm saying here, though, with the light and heavy Cronenberg? Because to me, it just feels like he is a director that sometimes can do that studio picture and still put his imprint on it. But other times when he's doing things on his own, it can be. I think it's a really acquired taste of filmmaking.
Yes, 100%. He and Lynch are very similar in that way.
Mm.
Acquired taste is a great way of putting it. I think both are phenomenal filmmakers, but even their best work, it's not going to be for everyone because they just have a very polar. It's what makes them great is also what is going to turn some people off because it's just a polarizing style. It's not the blockbuster everyman quality of a Spielberg.
Mm.
It's much more niche, much more just like not as publicly accepted, I guess.
because I think a lot of the stuff that he taps into, even with the light Cronenberg stuff, is very taboo, especially the concept of the flesh. The flesh is something that's really kind of pivotal to his work. Just before this movie, you had Videodrome, and that's like all hail the new flesh, is what James Wood's character says. In The Fly, Jeff Goldblum's character constantly talks about the flesh. You know, you have to understand the flesh. You know, with all that kind of stuff, and anything to do with like just bodies, but not like just bodies in kind of like a sexualized kind of way that Hollywood used to do it. The parts that are kind of queasy and uncomfortable and put in situations where they're manipulated and such. That's where kind of Cronenberg really kind of taps into that kind of stuff, and that's where I think the kind of the acquired taste kind of comes from, because he's talking about things that are really um, really not only taboo, but just can be uncomfortable for people to sit through.
Yeah, there's. I mean, that's also the thing is he kind of has makes you have tough conversations about his films, which again it just makes them. You're gonna have less people. One, you're gonna have less people through the door watching them, but then you're gonna have even less people than liking that even experience it in the first place. And but again, that's just what makes him so great. I wouldn't want him to be. I wouldn't want him to be any other way.
The Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel is brought to you by TeePublic. TeePublic is the world's largest marketplace for independent creators to sell their work on the highest quality merchandise. With over 1.2 million designs, TeePublic is sure to have something you'll love. So when this movie became like a hit, Rolling Stone did an interview with him, and he said, because the reaction to the film was like very kind of like a lot of people like, oh my God, I didn't expect this kind of stuff, you know. And so he intended for audience to, what he said, watch the unwatchable. And he actually said that the final scenes of Goldblum's character of Seth, the decomposition of his death, was actually inspired by the death of his own father, who was suffering from bone disease. So he kind of took that and kind of like and talk about like the fragility of what the human body is when placed in a and under like very kind of heavy duress and sickness as well. He also said another thing about when he talked about flies, insects. He always talks about how a lot of people kind of look to the outside of our world, our Earth, and look to space for alien life. And he's like, guys, we got it right here. It's our insects. It's our animals. This is the most alien life you can find. It's around us everywhere we are. And so he wanted to tap into that as well. And that's another kind of a thing I think was really kind of interesting in this movie, how just a blowfly, a little blowfly like this big, can create such enormous calamity upon this man's life. And yeah, the concept of flies and insects being just these alien creatures. I don't know if you ever watch any like Attenborough documentaries or anything on like insects and such. They are like very much what you think. They're maybe this big, but when you get up close and personal with them and you learn about their habits and other things as well, these things are our aliens on Earth. And I think it's a really kind of interesting kind of way of him to look at it in regards to his movie.
Xenomorphs. I mean, xenomorphs just look like big bugs. There's a reason
Hmm.
that even in Aliens, they call them bugs. Like, yeah, I'm totally down. I'm there with you.
Another person who was down with us, Jeff Goldblum as Seth Brundle. So this was the movie that really made him like a star.
Yeah.
So he did films before this. I mentioned before that remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He was in that. He did. He was in The Right Stuff as well, another Philip Kaufman movie. The Big Chill. He was blown away by Charles Bronson in the first Death Wish that came out like what was that,
No.
late 70s, early 80s or so.
Like
But this was the yeah.
he was also a background character on an episode of Columbo.
Oh really?
Yes, he's like a protesting student, I think.
He would stand out. How tall is he? Like 6'5" or something? Like he's a big man, right? So.
Yeah, he's a very big man. Plus, I mean, with him being so young, he's so like lanky. He's so
Mm.
skinny, so it's just like this tall, lanky man.
But he wasn't the person who was first approached for this movie. So interestingly, John Malkovich was the first person who was approached for the film. He said that he didn't see himself taking on a role like this at the time. Supposedly, Richard Dreyfuss was approached, which I can't. I'm trying to foresee Richard Dreyfuss kind of like in this role. I don't know. I can't foresee it happening. Another person,
No.
John Lithgow, as well. In an interview with a magazine called In Magazine about 10 years ago or so. He said his agent really wanted him to do it, but he's like, I didn't want to do it because I just finished another project. I was exhausted, and he found the story to be icky. That's what he said, like the word was icky, and he didn't want to go into that kind of stuff. And I think
Yeah.
what turned a lot of people off, well, there's two things. Number one, it was a remake of a B movie. And number two,
Hmm.
they didn't want to go sit in 5 hours of makeup to be transformed into this fly creature.
Yeah.
And Goldblum though said yes, like he said, like he'll love to do it. He'll wants to make it work. And not only that, but he also brought on Geena Davis with him as well because they were going out at the time. So you get like a two for one right there as well. But going back to Goldblum, I think it's just to me it's probably his best performance. I think. I mean, he's got like a gallery of great performances, but for me, this is one of the best performances to the point where there was actual talk at the time of Oscar consideration for him, and we all know that there's no way that the Academy from 1986 or 2026 is going to nominate anyone who does something like this, really. Or maybe not. I mean, didn't
Not
Frankenstein, Del
Demi
Toro's
Moore, just
Frankenstein? Yeah,
yeah, and Demi Moore. I mean, it's a very similar kind of like crazy body transformation type of film for
true.
the substance. So I think we're in a different era, even if we're just barely in a different era. And like we're this is the post Amy Madigan winning an Oscar era. So
Yes, I forgot. See, I'm so bad with my current Oscar history that I kind of forget these things. 86 though, you definitely couldn't see it though, because it's
not a
just, a
chance.
horror movie like this, even though the perform it should have. If if like it was us, still was like, on top of the board, the Academy would be, doing that, 10 times out of 10. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's a fantastic performance in the film, but I still think his best turn, because not only in the way that he is able to, display the mental kind of like breakdown of this character. But sometimes it can be really hard for actors to work through the makeup. I think
Hmm.
sometimes the makeup can determine the performance and kind of takes away from it. But the both the humanity and the monster of what Seth Brundle becomes, it's not only shown through the outside, but also what Goldblum does from the inside out as well. And I think that's why it's one of his best turns for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've struggled to think of anything that's better, mostly because Goldblum did have the issue of he once he was in Jurassic Park. I mean, that kind of became his archetype. That then was he was cast for that,
Hmm.
and then I mean he gets quirky roles and Wes Anderson things, but otherwise he's doing a very specific thing. But this is the era of acting Goldblum. Goldblum actually was doing some acting like this, The Big Chill, and it's yeah, this is it's so it's so cool to see someone so willing to do all the prosthetics and take it on in such a big way because he clearly was like there's a like a Dreyfus was an immediate no because of the prosthetics. So yeah, Goldblum agreeing to do it and going so hard with it because he could have said no, I'm not doing the extreme transformation. You can't tell it's me under there anyway. It's like no,
Good
but
point.
he was still doing it, and yeah, took it as like a way to be able to do his performance. And I don't know, I've always been so impressed with the like decay of both his physical form but his mental as well, and how he's able to get that across. Because as a kid, I never realized how much of a dork Seth is in the
Yeah,
beginning. He like painfully dorky at times, and so then to see him become like a sexual predator at one point in the film, and it just adds to the tragic nature of the story. And it's all Goldblum's performance just makes it so good. But then too, Geena Davis, because
yeah.
Geena Davis, it's all about like acting as reacting, and her reactions to Goldblum as Seth Brundle is just absolutely phenomenal.
I agree. And like I said before, they were a couple at the time. So before Gina Davis was cast in the role, a couple of people were approached. Jennifer Jason Leigh. Laura
Mm.
Dern as well. They were both going to approach. Both would have been great choices as well. I think both
Yeah, Dern is
actresses
awesome.
are fantastic. But Geena Davis it gets the role. Jeff Goldblum kind of recommends her for the role. And at the time, people were like, Cronenberg was like, okay, that's cool and all, but what if you guys break up, in the middle of, shoot, this might be a bad idea. But she insisted to audition, and she did, and she got the role in the end. And not only that, what was really interesting is that because they were a couple, they were actually rehearsing scenes at home and
Hmm.
such. So they really brought kind of like that chemistry that they had in real life, really does
Yeah.
come to the fore in this movie, to the point where a lot of people look at the film as kind of like a love story in many ways. In a lot of these
Oh yeah.
like creature feature kind of movies, where you have your protagonist goes through some sort of transformation, whether it's bitten by a wolf or going through a teleportation machine, whatever. It's not only about the impact that happens to him, but also the impact that happens to the people within his world. And in
Hmm.
regards to Seth Brundle, the only person in his world, really, because he's such a loner, is Gina Davis's character,
Yeah.
and of Veronica. And there was a really interesting thing that I found where I think it was the cinematographer who worked on the film. Let's see. Okay, so the cinematographer was Mark Irwin. So after The Fly comes out, he was approached to do a TV movie. And so this guy who came to him, a producer, let's see, there, okay, the director of the film was named Gilbert Cates, and he wanted to work, wanted him to work on a movie about a senior citizen's love story. So it was this movie called My First Love, which starred B. Arthur and Richard Kiley. And the reason why he wanted Mark Irwin to be in the movie, he said to him, I really want you, I think this would be a perfect film for you to do because I really love what you did on The Fly. And Mark Irwin's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about The Fly? And he's like, The Fly is a horror movie. And the guy, Gilbert Cates, looked at him like seriously goes, it isn't a love movie. What you shot was a love story. Okay, this was a love story that you made. And it is in many ways, because it's not only about this guy losing himself, he loses his relationship, but
Hmm.
through all the stuff that he goes through, the metamorphosis, she doesn't cut and run. She stays.
Yeah.
She tries to help him to the point where we can talk about some of the gory scenes that happens later in the movie, to the point where she's there with him and gives him peace at last at the end of the movie, which is one of the great cut off kind of like endings, I think, because there's
Yeah.
so much left to be answered afterwards. I love what Cronenberg supposedly there's a ton of alternate kind of endings. I love the fact that they went with that one, where it's just Seth Brundle puts the gun to his head, she pulls the trigger in the movie. Fantastic stuff. So yeah, the love story between them two is just absolutely great.
Yeah, it's a tragic love story for sure. I think too it's funny too because usually you add a love story to try and get more of a female audience because horror
Mm.
does skew very male oriented. And so usually you're like adding a love story specifically for that of like the marketing reason of adding we need to bring in more people. But for this it's like you already have that barrier of the gore like stopping so many people. So then I do think that the love story is something that then if it's not there, this probably doesn't permeate pop culture as it does. Yeah, there's still the grossness and the gore, but the love story and the tragic nature of it is what really brings the movie together. And it's it's what it gives such an exclamation point to this story, that whole ending, that then makes it ends on such a satisfying note. And that's how most any good film. I just saw Tony last night, the Anthony Bourdain movie. It's the same thing where it's like there's a moment that a good film has at towards the end where just everything comes together in such a way that you're just like, God damn, that's a good movie. And The Fly has that in spades. It's also much more traditional in its narrative structure than anything else Cronenberg did before or since. It's so weird to say, but this is Cronenberg's maybe most like Hollywood film
Oh
while
yeah,
still
yeah.
being yeah, while still being so niche. I think History of Violence gives it a like feel like it does have a gives it a little bit of a run for its money just because of it. I remember that being such a big deal when it came out and
Mm.
it being very accessible, but it just speaks to Cronenberg's abilities that he was able to make this weird film so accessible while still being so weird and polarizing.
Another star in the movie is someone who worked behind the scenes. Chris Wallace. He was the special effects and makeup supervisor on this movie, who would go on to win an Oscar for this, along with Stephen Dupuis. They won an Oscar for best makeup in the movie, and well deserved as well. Um,
That's well deserved.
he was given instructions by Cronenberg. Cronenberg said, I want you to portray the fusion of these two creatures to create something new. And it needs to be, it can't be just an insect. Like we talked about this, it has to be something that isn't familiar to audiences. We have to kind of shock them with what kind of comes out of here. And so Chris had a staff of 30 assistants at his California studio in San Rafael studio. They started in September 1985. And then in that same year, in October, that's when they had Goldblum come in. They took a cast of Goldblum's body, his teeth, and then a whole bunch of other stuff to do Seth's metamorphosis, which is really funny to think about all the work that kind of goes into creating him, but at the same time, there's all these things kind of dropping off him as well throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the ickiness, the whole scene with him looking in the mirror. Like there's various scenes actually of him looking in the mirror. The first one he's taking off his fingernails. And then the next one, he's already kind of metamorphosis, and he opens up his container, and there's just pieces of him kind of everywhere in these containers. I feel it's just yeah, again, great work, but great icky work as well. And so how he kind of did it, he was kind of like a mix of animatronics, prosthetics, and makeup, and then you make this kind of monster. And what I love about the 80s especially is that you have all of these just great artists, special effects kind of creature makeup artists. Not only do you have Chris Wallace, Stan Winston, Rob Bottin, so
Mm-hmm.
many people working at the time making all these great films. And I know that for in some horror movies that are made today or some genre movies, more independent ones, a lot of this stuff's kind of coming back, practical effects wise. You have filmmakers like Guillermo del Toro, for example, who's really kind of big on using that kind of stuff as well. But for me, the 80s is just like the ultimate of watching creature feature makeup effects really just reach these new levels of inventiveness. And I still think a lot of this stuff, whether it be The Fly or The Thing or Gremlins or whatever, still looks fantastic today. I absolutely love that stuff, and I think that these guys are kind of like the underrated kind of wizards of movie making, especially in this era.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest issues nowadays is even when a film is like, oh, we did all practical effects, they end up doing CGI enhancements to it,
Right. Yeah.
where it's just like, well, then what's the point? What was the point of you doing the practical if you're gonna try to like do something afterwards digitally? That then it's like, no, we just do it all in camera, and the stuff that does do it all in camera ends up looking so much better because of it and is able to withstand the test of time, with The Fly being such a great example. The Fly, The Thing, these films that were using practical effects, that it still holds up. Meanwhile, there's some things that from 10 years ago that thought at the time, yeah, they looked good, and now you see them and you're like, ooh,
Mm.
that is brutal. So it's like you don't want to have that. You want to future proof your movie, and future proofing the best you can is using practical effects. And the prime example of that, and it's the reason that this is still 40 years later such a big film. Which, can I just say too, 40 years and we do not have a fucking 4K. Sorry, I don't know if you can swear on
Mm.
this show, so apologies for
Absolutely,
that.
absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
but I am so annoyed the fact that we do not have a 4K of The Fly, and the fact that we're probably not getting it if they didn't release one for the 40th anniversary. So it's like, oh, it's not even a priority. It's like some bullshit.
It is some bullshit. And I think I find for a lot of films actually, because I kind of do a lot of these episodes based on anniversary dates. There is a lot of movies that are having 40, 30, 50 years, whatever, even 20-year stuff. And there's no significance kind of placed on it in regards to a physical media release. I really love when studios go a little extra and do limited kind of cinematic kind of runs in different
Yeah.
places. Like if The Fly came again, like on cinema for like a 4K as a part of a 4K release promotion, I'd watch it in a split second. I'd love to watch it in a cinema because the first time I saw it was on like DVD, what have you. So that'll be a great kind of thing to do as well. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes a lot of these guys kind of drop the ball when it comes to this. I think it's unfortunate, but there's some studios, whether it be Disney or even I think in gaming, didn't Sony say they're stopping physical production of games as well, stuff like that. Some of them are
Yeah.
still deciding to step away from it. There's such a market for that stuff, and the advances in technology in regards to home entertainment systems that now we're in the 4K kind of like revolution and such, there's money to be made and there's stuff to be done there. And yeah, for something like The Fly to not have something like a 4K, especially if it's such a beloved kind of cult title, it is a shame. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Arrow, let's get this going. I'm sure it's a Fox movie, so I'm sure it's just because of the Disney acquisition. I know that
Mm,
that screwed up so many things, and Disney offloaded their physical stuff to who was it? Sony? I think Sony's the
right.
one doing them. So then
Okay.
it's just like they're not even doing there. So I feel like so the fact that they're then using a third party to do their physical, they're probably putting a priority regarding like towards their Disney releases versus their Fox releases. So it just sucks.
It does. It
As a
does
physical
suck.
media collector, I'm annoyed by it all. But we just gotta hope it stays around. I just saw a statistic, I think this past week, where we 10 years ago there were 2 billion movies, like physical movies released, like made in a given year, and in the last 12 months it's like 60 million.
Hmm.
So it has dropped down to such a crazy degree because we don't have rental stores anymore. A rental store, we used to buy, 15 copies of a new release, that now that's not happening. So yeah, so now companies are just like studios are starting to forego it. And the real unfortunate thing that's happening is they're, since it's becoming a niche thing, they're just going, oh, we can charge a crazy amount for these. Which, so now that's why 4Ks are 35 week of when they were just 25 like 6 years ago.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere.
So
And
very frustrating.
the other shitty thing about the severing of kind of like the home entertainment release, especially when like DVD was at its fall, is that it was a really great other revenue stream for the people who were working on the film. It was another way to make money, kind of no different to like what CDs and vinyl was as well. The package
Yes.
itself brought about so many different royalties to so many different people. There was work that worked in the film, from the artwork to all these other stuff as well. And while there is demand for this stuff, I mean, I think on what the hope is, and I'm thinking like trend wise, even though the production of this stuff is down, the sales of it is actually kind of trickling up to how it was like not long ago. Because I think we've been so inundated with so many streaming options, and to the point where you might get a streaming provider because they have a certain amount of movies, you can't be guaranteed that those movies are even going to stay there. In fact, even if you buy something, a digital copy or something, you can't be guaranteed in a year that your digital copy is still going to be there,
Yeah.
because the rights change all the time. So when you have it in your hand and such, it will be it's a great thing. So yeah, 4K with a booklet or something, or maybe like maybe the box set like you mentioned before, maybe re-release that in a 4K or something. I don't know. That could be something really cool as well. Another thing that's cool when it comes to the 1980s, I really love this era of movie making because of the different inventions that are made in the movies, especially sci-fi movies. So just a year before, you have the DeLorean time machine, Back to the Future. In The Fly, you got the teleportation hubs, and the whole hope that Seth Brundle has in the movie is that because he has really bad car sickness, motion sickness, you can get rid of car traffic and everything else, and you can just
It's
teleport
so
everywhere.
simple.
It's
It's
so
so
simple,
simple.
right? But I always thought to myself, the process of teleportation is you go from one space to the other, but in between, your body is just split into all these different atoms and then collected back together again. I don't know about you, man, but I'll take the bus. Thank you very much. I don't think I want to do that. It's fun. It's fine enough to say beam me up, Scotty. But if something happens in between, the two spots, you're fucked. And that's what's another cool thing about this movie is that, yeah, it seems like a good idea, but all you need is just this little thing to like creep in there, and everything turns to shit. And I think it's very telling way to say, be careful what you wish for, especially when it comes to trying to skip traffic on rush hour.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that helps with an '80s film that was more prominent then than now is a full orchestral score. Like we
Howard
have
Shore,
Howard
yeah,
Shore performing with the London like Philharmonic Orchestra to do this, and it's big, it's bold, it's the kind of thing that you don't expect it to be an orchestral score. You kind of for a film like this, especially with the analog sci-fi tech, you're thinking it's going to be like synthesizer.
right.
So then the fact that it's this big booming score that I mean, it sounds phenomenal. I've always been a Howard Shore fan, and I think that this is amongst his best because it's haunting while still being very impactful and memorable, but it's memorable without feeling like a theme song.
Right.
Like because I feel like sometimes things can go a little too theme songy where you're like, okay, we don't need like this doesn't need to be quite as uh
The melodies, yeah, sometimes the
this theme
melodies can
song.
be sometimes the melodies can be very transparent about what's
Yes,
going on in certain scenes.
good way
And
to
it could
put it.
be, oh, it's this theme, it's that theme. Whereas the score in this movie not only does it kind of skip that, and not only is it rich kind of like its depth and its layers as well, but it really kind of heightens the tragic nature of the story as well, I think. If you had something that kind of synthy on there, not only would it date the film, but I was talking before about aspects that aren't in the film that don't date it. I think it will take away from certain dramatics in the movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes Howard Shore's scores just in general work so well, especially in this movie. It isn't jingly.
No.
It's haunting. It's really haunting in the best way though. Not in a kind of it's gonna stick with you, but it's gonna make you remember the movie but not so much just think about the score on its own. It's a package deal. Both of
Mm-hmm.
them kind of go together, and I think Shaw does a really fantastic job in the movie in doing so.
Yeah, completely agree. This, I mean, I'm like looking at his filmography right now, and it's like, dang, yeah, Howard Shore, just one of those people that just was able to. He doesn't. I feel like he doesn't get brought up enough, but I mean, that Lord of the Rings score alone is. I think about that like once a week. So I'm trying to think what else he did. Ed Wood, come on. That's like one of Burton's only non like Danny Elfman scores.
Mm.
So good, but yeah, all that to
Uh,
say, Howard Shore, phenomenal job with The Fly.
this movie released August 15, 1986. So it had a budget of it was at the time when it first started, it was like 9 million, but some reports say 15, but it doesn't matter because the
Mm-hmm.
box office was 60.6 million for this film. So it ended up being an unexpected hit. But it was something that funny that kind of happened in regards to this. So 20th Century Fox had just released Aliens. That
Mm-hmm.
was their tentpole kind of like summer thing. Um, the Fly wasn't supposed to do this. The Fly was supposed to be more niche. It was Cronenberg, it was actors you probably never heard before. And so when The Fly comes out, it actually knocks Aliens off the top spot at the box office. So essentially what Fox did is cannibalized one film with the release of the other one, to the point where like box office and analysts at the time were kind of like making like a lot of kind of like commentary about it, about how they misjudged what the market for this movie could have been, where Aliens like had a number one position at 7 million, and then the next week only makes he makes like 4.3, which is good, but Fly came in and just kind of, pardon the pun, swatted it away, which
Yeah.
I find to be really interesting because, even then, if you have two films and they're kind of similar genre as well, I think you kind of have to be kind of careful of kind of like putting them together, because you're putting the option out there, and when you have the
Yeah.
option out there, you really don't want that. You want to take an option away from your competitor, not from your own movie. So, but it's very kind of
Yeah.
interesting how that kind of happened. Spoke before about the Academy Award giving Wallace and Dupuis. It's Dupuis. So if anyone knows how to say that, go ahead. Do that. There were a number of deleted scenes in the movie that were taken away because in test screenings, a lot of people were freaked out from the deleted scenes. One of them had Seth attempting to bite off the leg of a fly after it protrudes from his skin. It caused a woman to faint at a preview screening. There was another sequence that showed a two-headed creature. So this is what happen. What happens? He's trying to do an experiment. So he puts the baboon in one thing, he puts a cat in another one, or was it a dog? I forgot which one it was.
It's a cat.
And
It's
it's a
because it's
cat,
always called the monkey cat sequence.
and which I watched for the first time last night, and great, icky as shit. I mean, that's the whole point, right? But great kind of like kind of stuff they do there. Which and Seth kills the creature, and some people didn't like it because number one, gross. Number two, Seth kills the creature, and he took away even more sympathy for this character
Yeah.
of Seth, as well. Like the monster of him was very kind of transparent in those moments. They're great deleted scenes, though. I mean, that dog, monkey, cat thing, whatever it was, fantastic work. I mean, really like I didn't know what to expect because I read the description. I watched the scene last night, and to see it kind of reminded me of some of boats and stuff where he did the thing as well. That kind of like that gory kind of like just dripping kind of like flesh kind of like thing is just it's crazy. And not only that, the thing kind of springs out of the teleportation device, starts attacking Seth Brundle when he's a fly as well. I think is a fantastic scene. Can understand why I got deleted though. I think it was just maybe one step too far.
Yeah, yeah, the gooey is a good way to describe a lot of the effects in this. They're all
Mm.
very gooey, and everything has like a mist to it. It's like you pretty much guarantee that before they did filming, they were just like spraying everything, spritzing it, making sure it had that little a layer of layer of moisture on it. Because again, everything just looks like wet and gooey, and it enhances the effects to such a degree that it's why they look great and why we need it in 4K.
GUI 4K is something definitely needed. We
Yeah.
need some technology next where the screen actually takes on the elements of what's on the screen, so it could just drip on its own. That would be kind of cool. Won't happen, but be cool.
One of these
Speaking
days.
about gory scenes, of course, I think the goriest and most infamous scene in the movie when it comes to the horror body horror aspect is the birthing scene, the nightmare that Gina Davis's character has, where she gives birth to like a large maggot kind of thing. And
It's
that
yeah, it's a fly larva,
I love her, and
which I think of maggots are like similar.
which leads to The Fly 2, which came out in 1989. So Chris Wallace directed this movie. So they wanted to do a sequel. They did. Eric Stoltz is in it. He plays pretty much a fly larva grown up. Like that's pretty much the whole point of the movie. He's like the
Yeah.
son of. It made me wonder though. Gina Davis's character Veronica wasn't the only person who Seth slept with. There's that other lady that he sleeps with after the arm wrestling match. Do you think if someone was going to make like another sequel or something like that, that maybe that could be a way to go where they have that character, Tawny, the character's name was, played by Joy Buchel. Do you think there's another Fly creature out there somewhere in this world, considering his sexual appetite that he has in the middle of the movie.
Yeah, I think they could have gone in that direction for sure. I mean, honestly, I think it was the second or third video I ever made for Joe Blow, and this would have been back in 2020, was actually on Flies, which
Mm.
is the sequel that never was made. That at one point Gina Davis was like heading with she was married to Rennie Harlan at the time. So Harlan was gonna direct it. She was gonna be the like the full blown. I mean, she's practically the lead in this as well, but she was gonna
Mm.
have a very like center stage role. And I don't remember the other details about it, but I remember it not being impressive. All the stuff like it did sound like it was gonna be a good movie, and Cronenberg had no interest in making it. So
So supposedly, Cronenberg was going to prep a remake of The Fly, but this was like a rumored in 2009. It wasn't until like 2011 where he addressed the rumors, and pretty much he had said he didn't do a wasn't writing a remake, but like a soft kind of sequel, and that the film just couldn't go ahead because just the stuff he wanted to do in the movie, 20th Century Fox wasn't really interested in it. Something he did do though was an opera. So there was a opera of The Fly, which Howard Shaw did the music for, that premiered in Paris on the 2nd of July 2008. Supposedly the reviews for it was not good whatsoever. Didn't quite work out. It is kind of interesting though how sometimes some of these filmmakers, especially like guys like Cronenberg, John Carpenter, for example, as well. They try to go through different avenues to bring their work to life. I think what John Carpenter is doing right now in these kind of like these music shows that he's doing, because of course he's a composer of all of his a lot of his movies, and he's up there. I think his son is with him on stage doing
yeah,
stuff with
I
him.
yeah I believe they released a new album last week.
And not only that, like I think Cronenberg's done a bunch of different like comic books. There was one thing I was really surprised about is that I did an episode on Big Trouble in Little China a month or two ago, and there's actually a John Carpenter written Jack Burton sequel comic book, which I had no idea existed. So it's kind of cool how even though the movies aren't being made, some of the ideas can come to fruition, whether it be a graphic novel, whether it be music kind of show, whether it be an opera. Of course, quality depending on a lot of this stuff, but it is a way for them to get their stuff out there. I dig it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel like I remember there being some kind of comic. Oh yeah, it was from 2015. IDW released it called The Fly Outbreak. I
Right.
remember there being some. It was essentially a sequel to The Fly 2 with Eric Stoltz. Because I remember because I was really into collecting at the time, and I remember
Hmm.
seeing it and being like, why, what, why would you ever do essentially a sequel to the Eric Stoltz Fly movie? It was only limited though, thankfully.
Last thing I've heard about any type of sequel or remake, 2024 Deadline said that director Nikyatu Yusu, apologies if I get that pronunciation wrong, had begun development on The Fly, which is a new film based on David Cronenberg's body horror masterwork, which she wrote and will direct for 20th Century Studios. So this was back in 2024. I haven't heard anything since about this. Kind of news to me. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like sometimes when it comes to a lot of these movies and you hear about remakes and sequels and such, I just find that probably the best way to go about celebrating some of these or maybe trying to make more money from it is just do like a limited theatrical on these anniversaries. Do the 4K, do that kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah,
Of course, I'm not a studio head and I'm not gonna do all this stuff, but yeah, I don't like sometimes when you if you're going to remake a movie, remake something that didn't work the first time, you know? Have another shot at it that time and then try to, reclaim something artistically at least.
yeah,
Instead of just because, and plus it's a remake of a remake, some of this stuff, it's getting a little tad too silly, I think. And like
yeah,
The Fly on its own, what Cronenberg did, I think is kind of untouchable because it's just so well done. I mean, they tried to do that Thing sequel, like what was that, 15 years ago or so. That didn't work out either. Yeah, I'm not really for anything like another Fly movie being made, especially not a remake of it. I think that's it's a kind of a untouchable property, I think anyway.
Yeah, I don't have much interest in it. I got excited when you first said the name because it kind of sounded Japanese. So I was like, oh, yeah, just have some like Japanese version of The Fly. I think that'd be great. And it's like, I don't have any interest in another American version of The Fly.
Mm,
We got the best version of that with Cronenberg's. So I don't have any just, and we've also seen how trying to mimic that, how it can go so wrong with The Fly too. So
mm,
it's like, no, I don't. I personally don't have any interest in seeing like, but also that's, I'm at the point, and this is kind of a new thing for me this year, where I just don't give a shit about any kind of new like, it's like the new Elm Street movies. As soon as they were announced, I'm like, I don't give a fuck. Like,
yeah,
do not care. I got my movies. It's been
yeah,
so long. New Friday the 13th, new Halloween, no, any of that. I'm just like, I don't care.
yeah,
They're gonna, whatever they release, it's gonna be for a new generation. It's not for me. I
yeah.
got my films, and so it's, if they were to announce a new Fly, I'd be like, okay, it's not for me. I have my Cronenberg film, so it's, but it wouldn't shock me. I would never be surprised to see that news pop up in my feed because
I
that's
am on board with you 100% in that same way, where even when it comes to just new movies in general, I kind of have kind of like come to the point where I'm like, these movies aren't really made for me anymore, or
mm-hmm,
like my generation, because there is a certain way that films are kind of like consumed these days and how they're made for certain like what the 2020-ish mindset as
yeah,
opposed to what we grew up watching. And it's just, and I came to that realization that you were talking about when Exorcist Believer came out after David Gordon Green did the three Halloween movies, which are their own kind of thing. But when Exorcist Believer came out, because The Exorcist is my favorite movie, and to watch that movie become just the bungling fuck up that it was, and just get so many things wrong, at that point I was just like, yeah, I can't get excited for this stuff anymore. Because you can't, number one, you can't match, what William Friedkin did, like you can't match what Cronenberg did with The Fly. But it's just like,
mm-hmm,
it's just you can't tap into what those creative people at that time made and how they made it. I think that's another central thing, how they made it as well. We've been talking about with the fly here, the look, the certain texture that it has. We've mentioned icky and gooey. That's a thing about this movie. It's like you're almost like you need to wash your hands afterwards while watching it because of the texture that it brings and the effects and everything else, the score. All of these kind of elements come together and they create this really kind of tasty morsel of this thing. And the experience of watching it and rewatching it, you can't replicate it again with another chef. You can't have another, cook in the kitchen. And at some point, with Elm Street and Halloween and Friday the 13th, especially, there's a million cooks in the kitchen and no one knows fucking their elbow from a fork, and that's what's a lot of these things happening. But the great thing is that we can watch The Fly still. I recommend if anyone hasn't watched it, by the way, I don't know why you're watching the show, but go ahead and stop now and watch it because it's a fantastic movie. I'm going to have a link down in the show notes where you can find it and watch it. And yeah, I just think this movie, 40 years on, still looks great. August 15 is the 40th anniversary. Still looks great. Still gets up gets under your skin. Still tragic. Everything about it just still works. And Tyler Nichols, I thank you so much for joining me to talk about The Fly because yeah, it's a great film, and it was a pleasure to be able to talk about it and the making of it and the legacy as well. So thank you very much for your time.
well, thank you so much for having me. And one final thing, well, I don't know, what do you, what do you do for ratings? Like personally, what do you subscribe to? Are you a out of 10, out of 5, out of 4? What do you,
I'm a fiver. I'm a
a
stars
fiver?
fiver, and so Fly is a four out of five for me.
4 out of 5? Okay.
Yeah, but I'm
I
a
think,
hard. I mark hard though. I'm very like the list of fives that I have are very
mm-hmm.
small. Like pure, like I call them pure fives. Like I have different degrees of these things as well. I'm a bit like a bit of an analytical kind of nerd, kind of statistician kind of guy when it comes like my own personal list look like something Matt Damon was scrawling and Good Will Hunting, it's like all this kind of shit. But yeah, so this one is a 4 out of 5, but 4 out of 5 is very good, because of the
Nice.
element of it as well. Definitely, I mean, when it comes to Cronenberg, I'd say maybe top three, top two movies, if not his best movie for sure.
Hmm.
Body horror, the same. Sci-fi horror, the same. Remake, the same. I think it in all of those kind of rankings, it rates high for myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'm a 10 out of 10 for it's it's always just been so good, and I do the 10 because I'm a critic for Joe Blow as well, so we do the 10 system, so I've just been used to that. Though oddly enough, we do a 4-star system on Needlessly Nostalgic because I'm like you, where I have a very distinct idea of what my 10 scale is,
Mm.
but with a 4-star scale, I'm much more loosey. Like it's much more like, yeah, do this that. I don't care quite as much. So yeah, that's I do things a little weirdly. So don't follow my example.
Hey, we've just been talking about Cronenberg. Weird is good.
Yeah, very true, very true. But yeah, thanks again for having me. Always a pleasure, and I can't wait to come back on and talk some other anniversary film with you.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content. Also, if you would like to request a review and support my work, please join my Patreon via the link in the description below.